Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and to the garage. Today we got another Mach-E video, so let's get started. Just start out with a couple things. So why did I buy this? Well, as you can see on the wall over there, I am a big Mustang fan. I previously had a 2010 Mustang GT with the 5-speed manual transmission. So love V8s, love manuals, love sports cars, but my family grew and needed something that was going to be a little bit more practical for doing car seats and stuff like that. And so I needed to get a different vehicle. Okay, so is it a Mustang? Well, let's go through all my thoughts and then we'll try and come to some conclusion here. It checks a lot of boxes. When you think about all the boxes a traditional Mustang checks, this can check almost all of them actually. And if you put a little bit of a future thinking spin, I think we can check them all. But let's walk through them. So, how does it feel when you're behind the wheel? Well, if you're looking out over the hood, it's got some great hood lines in it. The driving position, you could set the seat a little lower. The ride height on this isn't actually super high. It's definitely higher than the coupe was, but you're not as high up as like a full-size SUV or a pickup or something like that. So when you're looking out over the hood lines, looking out over the dash, I think it does feel like a Mustang. It's really planted on the road. I'll talk about that when I'm driving, but a lot of weight down low. They've tuned it to be, more of a firmer feel when you're going through corners. And so it's very planted, it handles well. And compared to my 2010 GT, I actually don't think I've really given up much in terms of how this handles. Now, I'm not an autocross guy, I don't track these cars, but let's just say you need to go pick up a pizza quickly. This is just as fun, especially, talking about handling. I think it's also very good. Is it exciting? Is it special? Well, like in the pizza analogy, yeah, it's exciting. If I'm gonna grab a car to go run errands, we have two vehicles, Jeep Cherokee and the Mach-E. I'm gonna pick the Mach-E pretty much every time if I wanna go for a more fun drive. Does it feel special? I would say it does. It feels a little different. If you park this in a parking lot with just other, kind of SUVs that are out today, other regular sedans that are out today, it stands out a little bit. It's different. It's more futuristic. As more and more of these get on the road, I think some of that will go away, at least a little bit, but there's a lot of the traditional Mustang on the road today, and people would still find those to be pretty exciting. Affordability. So I feel like that's one of the key things of the Mustang is you could always get into an entry-level Mustang, maybe the V6 base model, or now it's the EcoBoost base model. And it was all about optioning it up, putting the V8 in it, or the manual transmission in it, or the nicer seats, or whatever. And so you got a lot of bang for the buck, but you could always spend a little bit more if you wanted more power, if you wanted more comfort. But they're very attainable vehicles, I think, for a lot of people. You can pick up a regular Mustang for not that much more and oftentimes less than you're going to spend on some family SUV or a sedan. It's just maybe a little bit more. And so it's always kind of a bargain muscle car, in my opinion. And so is the Mach-E that as well. Well, the Mach-E is pretty expensive. It actually is, when you look at the base prices that are in the mid 40s, the prices keep changing with EV supply and demand and materials and all that. But, generally the traditional Mustang is going to be less expensive than the EV, at least up front. I think over time with maintenance, oil changes, gas, especially if you're running the V8, the Mach-E is going to catch up a little bit in terms of total cost of ownership. It's also a lot more practical, so generally you're probably going to use it more often if you need a practical vehicle. And if you look at other EVs in the segment, Tesla just recently dropped their prices on their new vehicles. So it's a little hard to do some of these comparisons, but you're probably in that same range. You're definitely less than maybe some of the higher end EVs like the Lucid now, or the Rivian, certainly the Hummer EV. I haven't seen the pricing on the new Silverado coming out, but those are bigger vehicles and trucks. And so I wouldn't say the Mach-E is exactly a bargain or super affordable if you're just looking for some quick fun, some minimum amount of money for some power. But the Mach-E is about a little bit more than just power. It brings a lot of practicality to it as well. So generally I'm going to say yes, it's fairly affordable. Does it turn heads? Well, it does. Sometimes it's for the reason you want, sometimes it's for the reason you don't want. I think generally you don't always get a lot of support for EVs depending on the area you live. Now, so I think some of the head turning or eye rolling is from that. Some of it might be from more muscle car enthusiasts, like how could you do this with the Mustang name? And then there's the other side of folks that are either really interested in EVs or don't know a lot about cars, and they see this car and they want to know what it is. Like, oh, what is that? Oh, it's a Mustang? Like, oh, that's cool. Or, is that an EV? It looks really futuristic. And so I think that question, is that an EV? It's like, okay, something's different, but they're maybe not 100% sure what engine is in it. And I think that's good because in the past, kind of pre-Tesla, a lot of EVs, in my opinion, just look very strange. And not like a good strange or good different. They just look weird. They didn't have very good styling. They didn't look very good. So does it turn heads? Yes. There are people that are excited about it. And to compare it to my old 2010 GT, I mean, that wasn't anything super special. GT 500 or a newer GT or something would be definitely more exciting to see. But that car didn't turn a lot of heads either, but occasionally it did. Somebody loved the color. It was the Kona blue. So somebody was just like, oh, wow, that's such a great color. Love the car. It's like when they saw it and like paid attention to it, they thought it was cool, but it kind of blended into the background and not a lot of people really noticed it. The look back test, when you get out of the car, do you look back when it's in the parking lot? Well, I'm a car guy. I love all cars. I'm not like pro EV or pro gas or anti EV or anti gas. I like all of it. And so, and your own car, you generally are going to turn around and look at it. So yeah, I do turn around and look at it. I think it looks good. I think it's interesting enough that it looks good. The paint on this is actually pretty interesting. It's called Space White. And so depending on the lighting, you might see throughout the videos, sometimes it looks very white, just like a bright white. Other times it looks more gray, and then sometimes, depending on the lighting, especially in the evening, it looks kind of like a white silver. There is a silver Mach-E. They only made it for the first model year, so you couldn't get the silver in 2022. That probably would be the color I would pick if I could get it. But I actually like this. There is a Star White that's a brighter white, and when you see them together, this looks very gray. But when it's by itself, it's kind of cool because you kind of have this spectrum of color. So I think the color is interesting, and I think taking a look back at it is fun to see. So continuing those boxes, so it's exciting behind the wheel. Does it feel special? Is it affordable? Does it turn heads? Do you turn around and look at it in the parking lot? Let's keep going. So speed and torque, definitely. The slowest Mach-E is 0 to 60 is 6.1 seconds. That's the rear wheel drive with the standard battery pack. This is the all-wheel drive. You'll see it says Mach-E 4. So Mach-E obviously, and then the 4 means this is the all-wheel drive model. You'll see an X here, 4X, for the extended range battery. And the 4-wheel drive does make it faster with the extra motor. So this 0 to 60 is rated at 5.2 seconds with the 4-wheel drive. And then if you have the extended range battery, that can pull more power out of that battery. And so 0 to 60 for that one is 4.8 seconds. And then the GT, with the bigger battery, and then they take the bigger motor that's in the back and they put that same motor in the front. That 0 to 60 is 3.5 to 3.8 seconds, depending on do you have the performance edition or not. So they're all very fast. My old Mustang GT, I believe it was rated at 5.3 seconds, 0 to 60. Now you're shifting gears. I bet 0 to 100 or the quarter mile, I'll have to look up those times for these cars. The GT is probably gonna pass this car once you get up above 60, 70. But off the line, especially with the torque and the four-wheel drive, this thing really takes off. This has 428 foot-pounds of torque compared to my old GT was 325. So definitely checks the box on speed and torque. Okay, do people want to go for a ride? Yeah, people usually want to go for a ride. I think a lot of that has to do with it being a new EV. It's called a Mustang. It's an SUV. You know, it looks very different from most cars you see on the road. And so people are interested, they want to go for a ride. I think over time, I think this will still be true, but I think generally more people will be wanting to go for a ride in, you know, the GT model with its performance. I think that's pretty true for standard Mustangs today. The convertible, the one with the GT, people are maybe a little bit more excited to go for a ride. Same is true with this. Okay, it's styling. So that can be fairly controversial, but if you think about it, just when you compare it to other SUVs on the market. Now, if your SUV preference is, you know, maybe a boxier style, like a G-Wagon or a Land Rover, something like that, this probably isn't gonna be your favorite. But if you like sleeker looking cars, maybe a little more futuristic looking cars, and SUVs, you know, this one I think definitely stands out, looks different, looks pretty sleek when you compare it to other SUVs you see on the road today. I would be hard pressed to find an SUV that I think looks better than this. I'm sure there's a few, but generally I think it looks really good. So the transmission. So I think, you know, essentially this is a direct drive from the electric motors. So you don't have multiple gears or anything like that, just forward and reverse. And so in terms of performance, it being electric, when you put your foot down, it just goes. There's no waiting for it to shift. That's one of the advantages of EVs. And so, you know, in terms of performance, I actually think, you know, the lack thereof of a transmission in this compared to a standard automatic or manual transmission, this is actually better for performance. Now, I think the manual is more fun. I think most enthusiasts would say, I want the manual, I want the V8. Totally get it. And so this is not that. But I think in terms of checking the boxes for is it a Mustang, I think this is actually better, I would say, than an automatic Mustang, and maybe not as good as the manual from an enthusiast standpoint. The last three here are the ones that, you know, I think have to think about a little bit in terms of is it a Mustang? You know, the EV aspect of this being an electric Mustang. I think most enthusiasts, I think if you know, think forward, well, you know, what's the new Mustang going to be like in 2050 or 2100? Okay, maybe it'll be an EV by then. You know, maybe it'll be cool when it's an EV then or whatever, because, you know, it has all these cool things that we've never even thought of before. And so I think it's a little easier to imagine in the future the Mustang being an EV. Obviously, there's one here right now. It just looks a little different than maybe we were expecting. The performance is there, like I've said. So yeah, I don't think it being an EV or not, I don't think that limits it to being a Mustang or not. So I'm gonna say yes, a Mustang can be an EV. The sound, okay. This is probably the hardest one if you're a true enthusiast to get behind, and I get it. I miss the old V8 sound from my old car. But at the same time, I think Ford's done a great job in here of not trying to just record the standard V8 GT and pipe it in through the speakers. Now, they are piping sound through the speakers. They call it propulsion sound on this. But I think they've done it in a really nice way. You can turn that on and off. And when it's on, it's not overdone. It doesn't sound like a gas motor. It sounds more like a whirring, whining, kind of a futuristic electric sound, if you will. So I'm gonna merge in here. We're up to 65 there. You know, you've got some power. It complements the actual sound of the electric motor, so you can hear the motors going when you're really on the throttle. Even when you're slowing down and there's some regen happening, you kind of hear this whirring going on. And so it complements that nicely. It's not trying to be a V8, but it is trying to sound interesting and cool. I think there's a lot of things that aren't V8s that sound cool. Roller coasters with like an electric launch. That always sounds cool. Test track at Disney World, kind of similar idea. That's a car-based ride, going fast, turning, all this stuff. You know, when they put the pedal to the metal at the end, you know, you got that electric kind of sound. That sounds cool. Fighter jets, those aren't a V8 sound, but they sound cool. And so I think if you're really mechanically minded and kind of like watching gears turn, seeing, you know, the belt going around on a supercharger, something like that, I think you can appreciate the whirring sound. I'm not saying it's a replacement for the V8, but I think you can enjoy the sounds that this does make. And so it's not as good as the standard Mustang in my opinion, but I think it does have some character from the sound. Okay, the last one, the body style. So this is probably the toughest one in terms of, is it a Mustang or not? When I go get takeout and they say, you know, put in, you know, what vehicle are you going to be picking up the food in? We'll bring it out to you. I usually don't put white Mustang because I'm guessing they're going to look for the wrong car. I'm sure this will change a little bit over time, but still, I don't think most people think of this car when you would say white Mustang. And so a lot of times I'll put white Mach-E or white Mach-E SUV. A lot of people probably don't even know what a Mach-E is either. But I'm a little hesitant to use the Mustang name because you automatically think coupe convertible sports car. So that was actually the one box that I felt like this couldn't check. And so I was gonna say, no, this can't be a Mustang because of that. But I thought about it some more. So if you think about Dodge and the Dodge Charger I mentioned earlier, smaller change here, but originally it was a two-door coupe, had 4 seats, big V8 in the front, and it was just your standard coupe muscle car. And then flash forward to more recently, Dodge turned it into their 4-door family sedan, and you can also put the big V8 in it, have all the power, and have it be a track car as well, or just a fun sports car. And most people didn't mind that too much, at least that I've heard, because there's the Challenger as well. The Challenger is the 2-door version of it. And so if you want that pure muscle car styling look, the Challenger is there for you. So if you think about Mustang a little bit, I mean, the coupe and convertible are still there, still available. And then you have the SUV here, 4-door SUV, that kind of complements that. So similar. And you know, the Charger was originally a 2-door. So I think most people could get behind Mustang going to 4-door. I think the harder jump is going to SUV, and I totally get it. You know, if you look at Ford, they canceled all their cars. There's no more Fusion, there's no more Taurus, there's no more Focus, Fiesta, probably forgetting some other nameplates, but they're all gone. The only car in the traditional sense left is the Mustang, the coupe and convertible. You know, if Ford was gonna come out with another car, you know, just make the Mustang electric, in today's environment and climate, I don't think that would sell as well. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would line up to buy an electric coupe Mustang. That will probably happen down the road someday. But I don't think there's enough of those people there yet. And then at the same time, If Ford comes out with an SUV that's an EV, but uses some other nameplate, maybe revives an older nameplate like they did with the Bronco, maybe they turn Thunderbird into the next generation of Thunderbird. They try and revive that nameplate, or Galaxy or something. I think there would be some excitement there, but I don't think it would sell nearly as well. And one of my favorite automotive YouTubers, Doug DeMuro, he did a whole video on Ford using the Mustang name for this car when it came out, when it was announced. I'll link that below. His main point is Ford had to use the Mustang name to be a successful EV maker and to fight Tesla, to go into competition with Tesla. Everybody knows the Tesla name, everybody knows the Mustang name, and nobody knows these other names that they either could have revived or come up with something new. They could have called it maybe the Mach-E, inspired by Mustang, but I don't think that would be going far enough for the competition they needed to go up against. One other note about this that I think really kind of sealed the deal for me that yes, this is a Mustang, is there was a Car and Driver article recently talking about Corvette doing an SUV. And I was like, wait, really? Interesting. In a similar vein as what the Mach-E is. But that seems a little more kind of even crazier. Corvette is, a less practical, two-door. It's always been about, the appearance, kind of this exotic car that's American made, that's way less expensive than all the, European rival cars. And so for them to do an SUV, that just seems, how could they? But it is what people are buying. That's part of it. And then look at what the other automakers are doing. Lamborghini has a Urus, the 4-door SUV. Ferrari's coming out with theirs. I forget what it's called. Porsche, they don't just make the 911. They make many other cars. They make the Cayenne. And so maybe the purest Porsche is the 911, but not necessarily, the other cars aren't necessarily any less Porsche. They're just different. And so I think going back to the Corvette, the rumor is they're going to actually GM's going to spin off Corvette as its own brand. Corvette is the maker, and here's the model they make. They make the Stingray. They make whatever the SUV is going to be called. I don't know. And so, I think if you think about Mustang as a brand, this starts to make a little more sense. You have, the Coupe GT, GT Coupe, GT convertible. Those still exist, but now you have the Mach-E as well, and they're all the Mustang brand. Now, officially, that's not how Ford's doing it. Ford is still, fully the automaker behind this. You won't really see their logo anywhere on the outside of the car. On some of the parts and stuff, you'll see Fomoco. But if you think about Mustang as a brand, yes, this is definitely a Mustang. And so I think the best Mustang, in my opinion, is still the GT with the manual transmission. Maybe you have a different Mustang that you like better. The best Porsche is probably still the 911 or the Carrera GT or the 918 or whatever your favorite is. But the other cars are still Porsche. They're still great cars. The best Lamborghini is still the, Aventador, Murcielago, whatever your favorite Lambo is. They still make an SUV, the Urus, which has great performance. Styling's okay, and it's luxurious, and it's also really fast. So it'll be interesting to see what Ford does over time. Right now, Ford is going to do, Ford has announced they're going to have two divisions, a gasoline engine division called Ford Blue, and then they're going to have an EV division called Ford Model E, not Mach-E, but Model E. And so these will be two, tightly woven organizations under the Ford umbrella, but they'll focus on EV and internal combustion cars. And so it'll still be the Ford umbrella. That doesn't sound like what GM's doing with Corvette. So, the Mustang as a brand isn't officially happening in how Ford set things up. Maybe they will down the road, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see more cars from Ford that, you know, are a Mustang. I think in the short term, it's just going to be the standard coupe convertible and the electric SUV. But it'll be interesting to see whenever they do introduce an electric coupe or maybe sedan, what they call it. I mean, if this is the competitor to the Model Y, what's Ford's competitor to the Model 3? Some of it will come from this, from the Mach-E. It can compete in some realm with the Model 3, but maybe Ford will come up with, you know, some other electric nameplate, different than Mach-E, but similar, and it'll use the Mustang name. So I think if you get behind that, you can still have your favorite Mustang, and this might not be it, and that's totally cool. So in summary, I think yes, this is a Mustang. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.